Deadpool in a superhero genre bogged down by bloated budgets, convoluted interconnected narratives, ridiculously over-the-top visual spectacle, tedious quippy humor, and increasingly stale characters. There was one series that dared to take a very different approach, refreshingly inventive, irreverent, self-contained, self-aware, R-rated, and genuinely funny. Deadpool was an absolute breath of fresh air when it burst onto the scene. Back in 2016, it was a film that finally figured out how to use Ryan Reynolds to his full potential. And damn, man, he really went all in with this one, allowing him to play Deadpool the way he was written in the comics. Unlike, a sequel came along a couple of years later, which was, it wasn't as fresh and innovative as the first movie, and some of the jokes definitely started to wear thin after a while, but I think it mostly held up pretty well. Unfortunately, plans for a third movie were shelved after Disney did what Disney does best, bought up 20th Century Fox, so they could shamelessly exploit all the IPs under its banner. Years went by, and not a whole lot happened, and it began to seem less and less likely that Deadpool 3 would ever get made. Ryan Reynolds was getting older, and superhero movies were rapidly falling out of favor. But then last year, in typical Ryan Reynolds fashion, he casually dropped the news that Deadpool 3 was finally going ahead, and even better, Hugh Jackman was going to be reprised in his role as Wolverine. Now, I have to admit this seemed like good news at the time because it marked the
cinematic culmination of the biggest bromance in Hollywood history and one of the few remaining team-ups to generate actual fan interest. But I couldn't shake the feeling that it might also be a bit of a poisoned cheese. Yeah, it was nice to see Hugh Jackman wearing the claws again because for me, and probably a lot of other people, his Wolverine is kind of a throwback to a simpler, more innocent time in movie-making when the superhero genre was this cool and exciting new world of boundless possibilities. But after finally figuring out how to make the character work, and then giving him a fitting send-off in Logan, did we really want to risk trampling on that legacy with a goofy comedy that might well crash and burn, and could a 55-year-old Hugh Jackman really get himself back into Wolverine shape, considering he was already noticeably showing his age in Logan 6 years earlier also, and this is the biggie. What were the chances that we'd get to see a proper R-rated foo-mouth Deadpool movie within the crushingly safe, family-friendly MCU framework? Could such a thing actually happen? Or would we end up with just another bland, neutered, depressingly formulaic Marvel movie that happened to be wearing a Deadpool skin suit? Well, we got our first hints about how the movie is shaping up during the Super Bowl last night with the first trailer for Deadpool and Wolverine. Yep, they really want you to know that Wolverine's going to be in this one anyway. I digress. So we pick up with Wade Wilson, who's enjoying a nice birthday celebration when suddenly the TVA from Loki show up. Music up nuts. An amazing start, guys, referencing a TV show that most Deadpool fans probably haven't heard of and totally don't give a D about, although it definitely could have been improved massively if Wade had just murdered all of them right there in the hallway. I've got to admit, though, this one really did get to me. You appear to have soiled yourself while unconscious. I wasn't unconscious. Finally, I can feel represented on screen. So the gist seems to be that Loki is recruited by the TVA to go off into alternate timelines and complete for them. I.e., he's leaving his own reality and traveling across the multiverse, leaving a trail of corpses in his wake, and by the looks of things, he might just run into an old pal along the way. Now, I have to admit I'm surprised to be saying this about any Marvel product at this point, but this trailer actually looks pretty good. I like how it kicks off its setup with the kind of pompous, over-the-top dramatic monologue that you expect from Marvel trailers, only to switch into full-on Deadpool mode the moment he shows up. There's plenty of action, plenty of blood and gore, plenty of swearing and crude jokes and self-aware humor, and a kind of tacit acknowledgement that the MCU has become stale, predictable, and played out, and that a character like Deadpool is exactly what it needs to get jolted back to life. The first step towards solving a problem truly is acknowledging that it even exists, and Deadpool could be the perfect vehicle for the MCU to poke fun at itself in a way that's actually funny and entertaining instead of whatever the Pockroth's She-Hulk was trying to be. Now, I've spent a lot of time, on the multiverse concept recently, because whatever the potential it might have had, It's pretty obvious that in the hands of lazy Marvel writers, it's devolved into a consequence-free sandbox, where nothing matters anymore. Every character exists in a quantum state of being infinitely alive and dead, and for the most part, it's just a lame excuse to work in some cheap cameos from other better movies, and that definitely still holds true for films that at least pretend to be telling a serious story. But weirdly, I think Deadpool might be the perfect way of tackling it because it's not bound by the same constraints as other Marvel films. It can truly cut loose and just have fun with the concept, throwing in all kinds of weird and wonderful variations on classic characters with no real concern about long-term repercussions. If you really have to do multiverses, I guess what I'm saying is, this is probably the way to do it now. All of that being said, I'm going to go into this with a kind of weary optimism here, because as much as this has the superficial appearance of a Deadpool movie, I'm still not entirely convinced that it's going to be allowed to play out as one. There's lots about the MCU to make fun of these days, and I don't doubt that Ryan Reynolds is very aware of the problems in the franchise. But I do have to wonder how far he'll actually be allowed to go. With this one, just imagine it for a second. Disney Marvel using the convenient framing device of a fictional character to openly poke fun at their own worst tendencies, the convoluted storylines, the forgotten plot, points the MCU, the endless political pandering, and tediously predictable storylines, and having the balls to acknowledge that, yes, we've gone a bit too far with all this stuff, but we see that now and we're working to fix it. Yeah, I don't really see that happening either. Ultimately, though, despite these misgivings, I can't say I'm too unhappy about what I've seen here. The trailer looks decent enough. The novelty of finally seeing Jackman and Reynolds reunited on screen is definitely going to be a crowd pleaser, and is one of the only high-profile superhero movies coming out this year. I think Deadpool 3 is probably going to do well at the box office from sheer lack of competition. If nothing else, is it going to reinvigorate the tired MCU and usher in a new age of violent, edgy, R-rated superhero movies? Probably gains. If I had to guess, I'd say it's probably going to follow a similar pattern to Guardians 3, a movie with decent financial returns and good audience reception. That can't really be exploited further down the line, and ultimately nothing more than a blip that does nothing to change the MCU's overall trajectory. But hey, at least it's something to look forward to in an otherwise bleak summer movie season. You've got the drinker interest, Deadpool. Just try not to it up now anyway. That's all I've got for today. Go we know.